It's 5:06 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Larry O'Connor here. One more hour, then we hand the baton. I want a baton. How come I never get a baton? Well, if I had a baton, I would hand that baton, while keeping safe distancing, of course, to the great one, Mark Levin, who will pick things up at 6 p.m. How happy am I that I'm the squishy center of the Oreo, surrounded by Rush Limbaugh on one side and Mark Levin on the other. Luckiest man in all of talk radio, and I know it, trust me, right here on WMAL. In 10 minutes, we're going to hear from the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, of the state of Texas. We'll get the latest on what's going to happen with that woman, Ms. Luther, who was sentenced to 7 days in jail for civil disobedience. We'll find out from the Attorney General of Texas himself coming up in just 10 minutes. Speaking of civil disobedience, let's focus right here in our area, in the great Commonwealth of Virginia, where this Sunday something radical is going to happen. Some Virginians are going to go to church. Dun, dun, dun. I mean, I'm only half joking when I say that this is a major, major showdown, actually, between the people of Virginia and their governor, Ralph Northam. Joining us right now to discuss this is one of the people who's put the governor on notice. He's also a delegate to the House in Richmond. He represents the 33rd House District. He is Dave LaRock, and he joins us now. Mr. Delegate, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Larry. Good to be with you.
I'm only partly exaggerating this. This is kind of a big deal. You are not allowed to go to church this Sunday, according to the governor's orders, correct?
According to his orders, that's correct.
So what are you going to do here? And it's not just you. You've got some of your constituents here, as well as some faith leaders that have signed on to this letter. What's your plan?
Well, my personal plan is I'm going to be in church. I probably won't be real specific about the where and what time. Because I'm not, excited about testing law enforcement. I think law enforcement's in a difficult position, very much like they were with the Second Amendment issue. Who's going to enforce laws that go too far? Mm-hmm. But I think there are other faith leaders that are saying enough is enough. That the governor really didn't have the authority in the first place to tell them they couldn't meet, to treat them differently than he's treating other organizations, and so they're ready to stand up for their rights.
When you speak with pastors, Mr. Delegate, are they already planning on maintaining safe distance within the pews or within the chairs of the church, that there will be protocols, that there will be hand sanitizers, that there will be masks and such? That's part of the plan?
Oh, absolutely, Larry. You can trust people, businesses, churches. They care about people just as much as the governor, maybe even more. And this is not some reckless thing that they're undertaking. They want to keep people healthy. They want to look out for people who might be more vulnerable than others. And I'm sure that's what will take place. Not at all reckless, very careful, the same sort of measures that are in place, but allowing people to look out for themselves, which is kind of what we usually do in a society where people are free.
Well, funny you should say that. Yeah, imagine that. So here's what's interesting to me, Mr. Delegate. You've had conversations with pastors and faith leaders. They've said it's time to get back to church. We will be able to practice these safe guidelines within the governor's as well as the federal guidelines that have been laid forth. Why hasn't the governor had those conversations? Why has he not said, listen, last thing I want to do in the birthplace of our democratic republic right here in Virginia, the last thing I want to do is squelch people's ability to practice their religion. Let's talk about it and let's figure out how we can make this happen. Shouldn't he have had that conversation by now?
I think he should have, Larry. You're exactly right. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but we asked for a meeting, and we sent the letter the last day of April. Haven't heard back. I called his chief of staff and left a message. And I just have to say, in reflecting on the measures that he put in place in the first place, the one-size-fits-all, where 16 people in Chincoteague couldn't meet in a building that was meant to accommodate 260, apparently it's just not a priority with the governor. And that's, I think, clearly why part of the problem here in the first place.
Delegate Dave LaRock represents the 33rd District of Virginia. That's part of Clark County, Frederick County, and Loudoun County. And he has sent a letter to the governor to let him know that this needs to be fixed. It needs to be amended sooner rather than later. And to that end, you will be attending faith services. The last thing the governor wants is the image of he or a state trooper in the doorway of a church preventing people from going to Sunday services. Do you think an accommodation might be made between now and Sunday?
Well, the governor just finished a call and said that as of Friday, there would be some lessening of restrictions. I'm not terribly optimistic that that's going to apply to churches to the extent that it would allow people to conduct worship in a normal, but with precautions in that manner. But let's hope so. It would be nice if he'd return my call and perhaps communicate that a little bit ahead of time. Certainly, people want to plan the meetings that they have and so on, and they won't have much notice if they do it this week. The notification that he just released is that it's going to leave some discretion up to local ordinances, which really doesn't sound like a good idea. We're a Dillon Rule state where you have some understanding of what rules are in general, and there's some continuity from one jurisdiction to the next. So letting it become a patchwork of different ordinances that doesn't sound very well thought out. But I think that's what he was alluding to. Yeah.
The governance of Clark County may allow for the citizens there to exercise more freedoms than perhaps in Fairfax County. That may be the reality, but it shouldn't be that way. Someone in Fairfax County should be just as free in the Commonwealth. So I take your point with sober interest, frankly, Delegate LaRock. You're absolutely right. What are you suggesting to the people in the 33rd when they call you, when they say, Dave, this is it's gone on long enough. At the very least, we got to get back to church. I mean, are you recommending that they just talk to their pastor and get it done? I mean, what should people do?
Well, I think the letter speaks for itself, Larry. I don't want to recommend people engage in civil disobedience without contemplating exactly what the consequences might be. As you know, a Class 1 misdemeanor is very serious. It's approaching the severity of a felony. I think it's up to $2,500 fine and a year in prison. That's what the pastor in Chincoteague is facing for conducting a service with 16 people. But this isn't really meant to create a showdown with the governor. It's just people that want to conduct worship services, and I really do hope that he will do whatever he can to avoid any kind of confrontation. These are just good people that want to get back to conducting their services, and it's a very necessary part of what's going on. When people's lives are upset and they're feeling anxiety, a church it becomes even more essential perhaps than what is normal. It's always essential, but people are stressed and they need that kind of comfort and counseling, and so it needs to resume.
Amen to that, if I can say that in this context, Delegate Dave LaRock. I appreciate you joining us. Keep us updated. We will be watching with great interest in what happens there and other places in the Commonwealth this Sunday as people dare in Virginia to actually go to church. Delegate LaRock, thanks for leading on this. Well done, sir.
Thanks for taking an interest in it, Larry. I appreciate it.
You bet. It's 5:14 on WMAL. We turn to Texas in a moment.